Hello, my name is Francoise Molenaar, and this is That Fertile Feeling, the podcast. If you've been trying to get pregnant for a while and you feel like life has lost a bit of its spark in the process, then this is the podcast for you. Every week, I speak to experts and peers from around the globe to discover how you can connect to your feminine flow and stop trying so hard to conceive, and how to put some magic back in your life and your relationships. Are you ready to make life just a bit more effortless? Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to a new episode of That Fertile Feeling, the podcast. And I'm here today with Marina Lyshova, who, again, as most of my guests, I found on Instagram. She doesn't really know how to call herself or what she should call herself. So I told her, well, for me, you are a womb wisdom keeper, because I see you posting so many beautiful posts and reels about connecting to your womb. And I think I initially found you because you were posting a lot about yoni steaming, and I wanted to do an episode about that. But I know that since then you've had your own fertility journey, or things happened. You experienced a loss that I also saw you sharing about in a beautiful way. Then you started a womb hara training, which we'll also touch on today. So many things, but maybe first I can ask you to tell us a bit about who you are and what you do.
Yes, thank you for that introduction. I am Marina, and I've been on my own journey of, I guess, finding how I can be of service to women. I've always known that it's my purpose to work with women, to be of purpose, to be of service, and wasn't sure in quite what capacity. Uh, and at some point, 2022, I was working in a corporate job, completely not aligned to my life's purpose, to my passion. And there came a time where I was like, that's it. I really just need to do what I've come here to do. I don't have any more time to waste. And I suddenly quit my job, and I didn't really know what I was doing, but I had this feeling that that's what I needed to do, and I trusted that. And so since then, I've been on this journey of exploring how I can be most of service, and exploring my own experiences and how I can share, I guess, the wisdom that I've gained through these experiences with women. And a lot of it has been around connection with the womb space, and being connected to your divine feminine, to the menstrual cycle, and honoring this sacred part of ourselves. And so yes, that's what I've been doing. I love to share about the sacredness of our menstrual cycle. I love to educate women about the sacred and ancient practice of yoni steaming, which I have a lot of personal experience with. And recently, I've also become a womb hara practitioner, which is a blend of body work and frequency medicine, and shamanic healing, to help women reconnect with their womb space and to heal physically, emotionally, energetically. So it's working with all the different layers of traumas and diseases and challenges that women experience.
And when were you first called to start, connecting to your cycle, doing the yoni steams, connecting to the divine feminine? Was there like a specific point, or is it something that grew over time?
Definitely grew over time. So something I've also shared quite a bit about is my journey with candida. So that's something that I've had, like a thrush, like a recurring thrush that I've had since I was 9. So the first time I got it was when I was 9, and like a thrush down there. And it's been a recurring thing in my life until a couple of years ago. And ultimately that has been my starting, my like that led me to exploring this world,
Mm-hmm.
because um I feel like, I've tried every single thing to try and cure myself of this thrush. I've tried, like, I went to see so many gynecologists, so many doctors, so many creams, so many like natural healing remedies. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like the diets, I feel like I've tried all of it, and it was just a thing that kept coming and coming and coming, and like nothing would work. And so or nothing would like make any permanent changes. It would just kind of maybe help with the symptoms, but then a week or two later I'll get it again. And I just started thinking, like, maybe there's something more than just a cream or like a remedy.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's something within me that's like calling my attention, basically, that I need to bring my attention to something within myself. And so that's has kind of, I feel like, been a really pivotal point of my journey, is just trying to realize, trying to figure out what it was, and if that wasn't an external, was that something internal.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of started taking steps backwards from there. So I just thought, okay, so if it is trying to tell me something, what is it trying to tell me? And I just felt into it. And I just thought, well, because the symptoms are in that area of my body, that feminine area, body part, like maybe there's something there. And and then I started thinking, well, how do I relate to that part of my body? How do I feel about it?
Mm-hmm.
And I've realized, well, I'm not actually that connected to it. Like, I am quite disconnected. You know like, all of those things, like, even with sex, sometimes I didn't feel fully connected. And just making love to myself, I also felt quite, I didn't feel like I was like, oh yes, like,
Mm-hmm.
I have so much connection to that body part. So I thought, okay, and why do I feel that? And then, just kind of started slowly peeling layers from there. And I kind of dug back and back, and I felt like there was some trauma with my, or like, yeah, some trauma or relationship issues with my dad, and how that made me feel about myself and relationship to men and myself as a woman and my self-worth.
Mm-hmm.
And basically just unpacked this Pandora's box for me. And step by step, that's just kind of how it led to just connecting more with myself and my womb, and honoring that, and connecting with that part of my body and listening to that part of my body. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's basically it. And I've been on this journey. I feel like it's a journey.
Mm-hmm.
It's a practice. So yes, I've been on this journey. I don't even know, I can't really pinpoint how many years, because I feel like it's just been so gradual. And
Yeah.
like, yeah.
I so recognize what you're saying. It's not something I've talked about on the podcast before, but I actually, so I forgot to mention, you're from Australia, right? Where are you based? In Newcastle?
I'm in Newcastle at the
Newcastle.
moment. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm originally Russian. So if anyone
Oh.
hears my accent, I'm Russian.
So I went to Australia when I was 18 to study English, and I had an ear infection. So I got antibiotics from my doctor, and I developed candida after that. And I remember I had to go to the doctor in Australia. So that was already scary, like in a different country. And then I also had these symptoms. And I was like, I have to go to the doctor, and he's going to have to look at my vagina. And I was just, because I didn't know what was going on. I just know that it was itchy and had the burning sensation. So I went in and I told him about this, and he didn't even have to look. He was like, "Oh, you have a yeast infection." So I was a bit, I think, even annoyed. I was like, "Okay, it took me so much courage to come here, and now you don't even want to look, and you just tell me it's a yeast infection." But it's also surprising to me that I was 18 years old and no one had ever told me anything about this. So for me, I thought that it was this huge thing happening to me. And then later I found out that it's so common. And what I discovered along the way, and I think that's something that you mentioned as well, is that my symptoms would get worse whenever I had sex without being ready. You know, and I'm not talking about abuse, but just when you're in a relationship or even just a one night stand and you feel like, okay, just let's go. So that disconnect from your body. And once I stopped doing that, even with my own partner, who I'm even married to today, I really had to learn to respect my womb space, my vagina. And a part of that respect is also waiting until she really is ready for sex. And the beautiful part of that is once I started practicing that, I no longer got those yeast infections. But it also really helped me in fertility treatment because there's a lot of penetration in treatment as well with, speculum or the ultrasounds. And I realized, but I'm no longer allowing my partner to touch me in this way, even though he would never do that on purpose, right? But I'm setting boundaries in my relationships. I'm also going to set boundaries now in my clinic and tell them, look, I need to be relaxed and maybe I can do this myself so that we do this really carefully because it's the same sensation. It's the sort of pushing through when you're not ready or what's like for the egg retrieval or for a transfer, they would also scrub you a little bit. And it was like someone was scrubbing like a toilet bowl. And I was like, what are you doing? This is my vagina. You need to don't treat it that way. Treat it with a little bit of respect. And I feel that's really the beauty of this journey is you start to develop that partnership with your body and seeing that it deserves respect and it deserves to be treated in a certain way. And that's when you also see a lot of these symptoms disappear. So it's really a cry for help. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that. I really resonate with that a lot. And it was very similar for me. I was also reflecting like when was I having these flares and what will happen prior to that? And yes, a lot of the time it was when it was when I wasn't quite ready and it was a sexual intercourse and things like that, and also emotionally when I felt least kind of like I felt for me it was really tied to my self-worth. And so a lot of the time when I was going when I had a lot going on emotionally and I was just beating myself up, that was also coming up for me. And I would have a flare. Yeah.
And I think they're connected, right? Because in order to set boundaries, you need to feel that you're worthy of respect, of setting that it's okay to set boundaries.
Yeah.
Or to treat yourself in a way that's really positive. Yeah. And can you share a little bit about your own fertility journey? Because I know you're a mother, I think.
Yeah. So I have a son. He is going to be 5 very soon, and he was a surprise baby. We didn't consciously conceive him. He just came and he surprised us, and it was a beautiful surprise. And then a couple of years after that, I think when he was about 2 or 3, I was like, okay, I really want to have another baby. I'm ready. Even though we of course, like I think a lot of people were planning, no, we've got to get our lives together, going to get a house and have like stability and this and that, and then we're going to have a second one. Because we didn't have a chance to do that before the first one. So we're like, we're going to be ready for the second one. And we had plans to do that, but then COVID happened and a lot of our plans kind of went up in flames and things changed, and we were kind of back to just, I don't know, kind of being in between and not really knowing what we're doing. But I also felt like I think I don't want to wait until we're so secure and all of that. I'm really ready to have a baby now. And my partner was like, I can't do it. Like, I'm not ready. I'm not doing it right now. And that was really difficult because I thought I'll be able to convince him slowly. And, I'm generally really good at convincing him. But yeah, he just wouldn't budge for, over time. And he just wouldn't budge. And it just became so heavy, like it just became so heavy. And I just felt like I wanted this baby so much. And he just wouldn't. And
And what was it?
Um,
Was it he wasn't ready? What was the thing for
well,
him?
he felt like he wasn't stable enough
Mm-hmm.
because at that time I was working full time and he
Mm-hmm.
was looking full time after our baby, and I wasn't happy in my job, and
Mm.
it was just kind of like we didn't know what we were doing. We were living with my parents,
Mm.
and he was like, "We can't, we're living with your parents. We don't have a place to stay," and
Yeah.
it was just like really up in the air. Like there was, and he just wanted to be stable. Like I feel like it's a masculine thing
Yeah.
to want that, and yeah, and that was the thing for him. He just felt like um yeah, he wasn't in the right place for that. And yeah, and that's been, I don't know how many months or almost a year it kept going, and he said, you know what, let's do it in a year and we'll see what happens. And a year passed and things didn't really change that much, and yeah, and actually we ended up having a bit of a break at that point
Mm-hmm.
because I said, well, you said a year, things haven't changed. I feel like you haven't really done anything. I mean, there was a lot of stuff going on apart from that, but that was a big part for me because I really felt the presence of the spirit baby.
Mm-hmm.
I had these full blown conversations with her, and this baby was just like, I really need to come through,
Mm.
like before this date, and I was just like doing my best to get my partner on board, and it just wasn't happening. And because we were just so up in the air, there was so much instability, there was a lot of issues in our relationship, and so at that point I thought like we just need to take a break
Mm.
because I can't do this. And yeah, we ended up taking a break, I think about 6 months. And and we weren't sure if it was going to be permanent or if it was going to be temporary. And yeah, but after 6 months, we felt like, okay, things have kind of normalized a little bit. We found ourselves again after being 10 years in a relationship. We met when I was 18.
Mm.
He was 20. So we were really young when we met. And I feel like, we just kind of morphed into this entity.
Mm.
And so just having those 6 months apart was really useful for us to kind of find ourselves again and just kind of refreshing things a little bit, and um, just remembering why we're together and all of those things. And I feel like we both did a lot of inner work in that time.
Mm.
And I felt like he had a really big shift as well. He was 6 months, like kind of just on his own, doing his thing. And yeah, and we decided we were gonna get back together again, and he said he was ready to have
Mm.
more babies. He said we can have as many babies as I want. And I want a lot. I'd love to have a lot of babies. Anyway, so yeah, but then I was like, oh, I'm in my own thing now. I actually have a lot of projects that I want to be doing. I actually don't want to conceive right now. And I was like, okay, like whenever you're ready.
Mm.
And I think within a couple of months, if that, I thought that I was pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I wasn't really planning again, and I got really excited, I was like, oh, okay, maybe it needed to happen. And I was super excited. And then I haven't told people I'm probably pregnant. I shared in like in women's circles that I'm pregnant, probably pregnant, like very likely pregnant.
Mm.
And then my period came, and I just felt, so I don't even know, like, that feeling of when you think you're pregnant and then your period just comes,
Mm.
and yeah, kind of like devastated. And so in that moment, I was like, no, I don't want to wait. I want to have this baby now.
Mm.
So we're gonna try again. We're actually gonna try and do it this time. And yeah, and I think that was in March last year. So we've been trying since March. Like it hasn't been every single month, but I think we've tried for 3 to 4 months. I think we did take 1 month off because things just didn't quite work out, and yeah, there was going on a lot going on emotionally. So yeah, but I think approximately 3 months or 4 months of actually trying. And then in July last year, I ended up getting pregnant.
Mm.
And actually, sorry, maybe even just too far to rewind a little bit of what was happening within those 3-4 months is I just didn't expect that it wouldn't happen immediately, because it happened so easily and unintentionally with my first son, that I just didn't even think that it would take time for us.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was every month that it wasn't happening, it was just like building a lot of emotions, and a lot of sadness, and a lot of anger, and a lot of resentment. I feel like I was holding on to so much resentment, and I just kept thinking, well, he didn't want to do it like a year ago
Mm.
when, I was younger.
Yeah, yeah.
And when I felt like it was the time when the spirit baby was talking to me. Now, like, she's not here anymore. I don't know. Like, I can't feel the spirit of this baby. So, yeah, there was a lot of emotions building, negative emotions. And I feel like by the end, it was just like, I was just an emotional mess, like pretty much the whole time. I
Mm-hmm.
was just constantly emotional about it. And I was always like constantly triggered by women with children, pregnant women. And I feel like they were just all around me. Like, I couldn't go to the beach, I couldn't go to the shopping center. They were like everywhere.
Mm.
And I was also really fixated on our age gap with my son.
Mm.
I was like, oh, they've got to have a small age gap. He's getting bigger. Like, how are they going to play together? And I was just like thinking about how difficult it was going to be to like homeschool them and all of the things. And, just thinking of all the problems in the world, and just kind of digging myself into a hole and getting more and more frustrated by everything. And yeah, and there was a point, I think in like July, just before my ovulation, and I was so angry. And I was talking to, I don't know who, to my womb, to my baby. I was like, this baby better be conceived this month,
Mm.
otherwise I'm not gonna try again. I'm gonna leave this relationship. It's not meant to be. Like, I was just so angry. And I I ended up conceiving that
Mm.
month. Um, so yeah, and it was really weird because it was just such a strange feeling, because I felt like, oh, like I'm pregnant, like, okay. Um, but I didn't feel the excitement that I thought I would feel.
Mm.
And my partner was also like, aren't you excited? Aren't you happy? Like, you wanted this so badly. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. I can't explain it. It was just, I just felt really strange. And then about when I was about 8 or 9 weeks into the pregnancy, my partner was like, "So how are you going? How are you feeling? Like, what's happening?" He was kind of checking in, and I remember I just broke down into tears, and I just said, like, "This baby's making me really depressed."
Mm.
And yeah, and I didn't know what was happening. I just thought maybe that was the energy that this baby was carrying, which wouldn't be a surprise considering how much negativity I was feeling leading up into all of that.
Mhm.
Um, and so yeah, but apart from that, it was just a normal kind of pregnancy. I felt a little bit nauseous in the mornings, and no, just the regular things. And then at about 12 weeks into my pregnancy, I started noticing like really light spotting. Um, and Actually, it's worth noting that I was going to have a wild pregnancy,
Mhm.
so I didn't do a pregnancy test.
Mhm.
I track my cycle, and because and I track my basal body temperature in the
Mm.
morning. And so, if your basal body temperature is high for consequently for 17 days, that's
Mhm.
pretty much a confirmation of pregnancy.
Mm.
So I was just, using this method of kind of tuning into my body and kind of tracking my body and seeing what's going on.
Mm.
So yeah, I knew that I was pregnant even though I didn't have a pregnancy test, and obviously I had the symptoms and I knew it was happening. Um, and yeah, so 12 weeks into the pregnancy, I started having really light kind of spotting. And actually, even before that, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm a bit all
Mm.
over the place. But at 7 weeks, I remember we were about to go to one of my son's friend's birthday party, so
Mm.
a fourth birthday or something. And I went to the toilet just before, and I saw something like a little clot, like a
Mm-hmm.
really small clot, falling down into the toilet. And we were just rushing off to the party, and I thought, oh, you know what, like it's a bit scary, but I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to worry about it
Mm.
unless, something else happens.
Yeah.
And if it happens, maybe it's just, I'm going to trust the process here.
Mm.
So yeah, and we went and nothing else happened for weeks. So I was like, I completely actually almost forgot about that.
Mm.
And just kept going with everything else. And then yes, at 12 weeks again, I started having like really light spotting.
Mm.
And I thought maybe that's something normal, because I did have like implantation bleeding with my son, and I did have like that kind of pink discharge, and I thought it's probably the same thing.
Mm.
I'm not gonna worry about it until I need to. But the discharge just kept like the red discharge, pink discharge, it just kept happening. And it wasn't really strong, but it
Mm-hmm.
was just every time I'd go to the toilet I could see a little bit. um but again, I was like, I'm just gonna go with it. I really didn't want to go, and like I just really wanted to trust my body with this pregnancy, and I
Mm.
didn't want to be part of like the medical system with this pregnancy. Just really wanted the the natural course to take its place, whatever needed to happen.
Mm.
And so yeah, and that kept going for about 2 weeks. So nothing much was happening. It was just some light discharge, like a pink red discharge. It started turning a bit brownish as well at some point, and slowly kind of increasing and increasing. And then one morning I woke up and it was red, and I
Mm.
was like, okay, well, like that's not a good sign. But somehow again, I just felt like it, like a pregnancy loss wouldn't happen to me. I just felt like I'm young, I'm healthy,
Mm.
I've had a healthy baby before, like maybe this is just normal. Like I still had kind of this feeling that now everything's okay.
Mm.
Um, and the next day, again, there was a lot of red bleeding. So I called my friend who was also my doula with my first birth. And I told her, I was like, oh, yeah, what do you think? Like, I just felt like I needed some kind of validation or confirmation from someone to just look at it objectively,
Mm-hmm.
and tell me what's going on, because I just kept, being really positive and thinking that it's okay.
Mm.
And she was like, well, it's not good generally, but you don't really know. We can't really tell unless you go and get an ultrasound, and and that can confirm things for you. And yeah, and I was like, oh, I don't really want to get an ultrasound, because like again, I said I really want to stay away from the system this time around. And the next day, I just felt, the blood just kept increasing. There was more and more blood, and I didn't have any cramps. So that was the thing that kept me thinking maybe everything's okay, because I
Mm.
didn't have any cramps. But then the day came, and I was just like, you know what? I can't be in this limbo anymore, not knowing what's going on. And so I was like, I'm going to go into the emergency, and hopefully that they can give me an ultrasound right away,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what my friend told me to do. She
Yeah.
said, if you go to a GP, you have to schedule it and wait for like until there's availability, which can be
Mm.
days or weeks. But if you go into the emergency, they can do it on the spot. So I went into the emergency, and yeah, had to wait a lot of hours, obviously, being in the
Mm.
emergency department. But eventually they took the blood test, and then they took me to do the ultrasound. And I still, like, even with everything that's was going on and all the blood, and I just kept thinking, no, it's okay. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
feel like this wouldn't, like, I have a healthy baby, like this is not happening to me.
Yeah.
And so I went into that ultrasound, and the guy was just looking at something, and I was like, can you see anything? What's
Mm.
happening? He was like, oh, your doctor's gonna tell you the results.
Mm.
But then he was like, but I don't actually see anything. And I was like, what do you mean? You
Mm.
know, I was so confused. I was like, how can you not see anything? Like, even if I was having an early pregnancy loss, like a miscarriage, surely you would still see
Yeah.
something, right? Like, because
Yeah.
I didn't pass the baby, I didn't see any like tissue when everything, all that I was passing was just like some red blood and
Yeah.
like small clots. So I was so confused by that. And then he got another woman to come and check, and they were both looking, and they're like, yeah, we can't see anything. I was really confused. But obviously at that point I realized, you know, I'm not gonna be having a baby, and as like I thought I would. So yeah, and I just cried in that emergency room while you know, whatever they do, they did. And the doctor came to me and he just said, I don't remember exactly what he said, to be honest, but you know, he just said there was nothing in the ultrasound, and your HCG, your hormone levels, like for the pregnancy, look really low as well. Um, so maybe he literally said that. He said maybe you're early in your pregnancy, like 5 weeks into your pregnancy, and that's why we still can't see anything. And I was just like, why would you even say that? Like, I was 14 weeks, like I tracked my cycles, I know what was happening. I used the fertility awareness method, I tracked my basal body temperature, like I know when I got pregnant, I know that I was pregnant. Like, why would you even tell me that I'm like 5 weeks into my pregnancy and why am I bleeding? Like, and they were like, we don't know, like, and it was so weird, that whole experience. They didn't really tell me anything else, and I just said, okay, like, I'm going home. I got what I you know, you gave me what I needed to know, that I wasn't gonna have a baby, and that was enough. Like, I didn't want anything else in the hospital. So I came home and I started researching. I was like, how is this possible? Like, I was surely pregnant. Like, I was even doubting myself. I was like, am I crazy? Um, uh, yeah, but I've learned that what I've had is blighted ovum pregnancy. So I've never heard of that term before. I've experienced it, but basically what that means is when, you know, you get pregnant, but for whatever reason, uh, you know, the fetus doesn't develop. But sometimes it can still stay in your body, and sometimes your body still keeps developing the pregnancy hormones. So, you know, you still get the nausea, you still get all of those pregnancy signs. And your body's still holding on to that pregnancy, but the fetus is not actually developing. So it's kind of like a phantom pregnancy. So, yeah, so that's what happened. And pretty much that same afternoon that I came back home from the hospital, I started getting cramps, and I was like, okay, this is starting. And I thought, again, like, I didn't really know what to expect with the miscarriage. I think we were chatting a little bit before this podcast we started recording, is that I know, I feel like I love birth and pregnancy space, and I know so much about that. But I've never really come across a lot of people sharing about their pregnancy loss, and how that even unfolds. So I didn't know what to expect. I just thought I'll be having just like kind of like a painful period, you know, and I thought, okay, my fetus hasn't really developed. They couldn't even see it on the ultrasound. It must have been like, you know, just a few cells, probably won't, you know, feel anything or pass anything, which I felt like a relief. I was like, I would be really sad if I had like a fully formed 14 weeks baby. Like, it felt like a relief that, you know, there was nothing substantial there. So yeah, I prepared some yoni steaming for myself as soon as I felt like things were starting to get going. So I did a really beautiful steam, and, you know, things really picked up from there. Um, yeah, and it got really intense. I didn't expect how intense it was going to get. It really felt like full on labor. Um, you know, it wasn't so different to what I experienced with my first birth with my son, because the intensity, the waves, the contractions, how they built up, and just the intensity of it. Like, it was really intense, to the point where I was just on the floor and I was screaming. I was just I was giving birth. um and it's funny, actually. I'm just remembering that just before those contractions came on, I was with my partner in bed, and I was just saying, oh well, like, we'll see how we go tonight, but maybe if I feel okay tomorrow, we can go to the market. And there's some fun activities happening for the kids, something like that. Anyway, because I was like, I'm just gonna have a painful period, that's all that's gonna happen. So I was totally shocked by what like came within the next few hours, and it took, I think, about 6 hours altogether, and like really intense 6 hours of really painful contractions. And um and just similarly to my first birth. So my first birth, I was running to the toilet a lot. I had like diarrhea and I was vomiting. And this birth was the same. I was vomiting. I had to run to the toilet multiple times. The intensity of it was very similar. Um, and yeah, and I think at about just before 2 a.m. in the morning, I my contractions, like, I started passing a lot of big clots. Um and at one point I was just laying on the bed and I was waiting for the next contraction to come, because they were coming really quickly. And I was exhausted. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. I haven't slept the night before because I was so worried about what's going on. So I was really exhausted, and I was just lying there, waiting for the next contraction, and it just wasn't coming. And I was like, oh, okay, like maybe it finished. And so I went to the toilet, and a lot of blood was obviously coming out. And I actually had a jar because I wanted to capture some of the blood of my miscarriage and do something with it. Because I like to do rituals with my menstrual blood, and I thought it would be really healing to do that with the blood from my womb. With this pregnancy loss. And so I got the jar to just catch some blood, and all of a sudden at that point, like a little kind of placenta or sac came out and just slipped right into that jar. And I was like, wow, okay. I didn't expect to see that, but it looked like a fully formed, beautiful, whole placenta. And I was really surprised, and I feel like that validated a lot for me. Just seeing that, like, validated my experience of what I was experiencing over those 14 weeks. That I wasn't crazy. There was something growing inside of me.
Yeah.
I did have all of those, the nausea, the cravings, like it was all there. I wasn't making that up and imagining that. So, just seeing that was really special. And yeah, and that was the end of that kind of birthing experience in a way, because I didn't have any more contractions, and I did go to bed, and everyone was sleeping by then, my partner, because he was relieved that it was done. And we were in bed, my son was sleeping, and I just remember I felt so lonely, because I just went through this whole birthing process. I've had like a full-on labor, like an actual birth, and I was just lying there, pretty much on my own without a baby. And that was a really hard part of just kind of feeling that and being with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I recognize so much of what you're saying. And I think maybe the most important thing to note, and that's also we discussed before we started recording, is that so many women have miscarriages. And so I had my miscarriage at 12 weeks. We had an ultrasound at 11 weeks, and that's when we found out that our baby no longer had a heartbeat, probably stopped around 9 weeks. And there was a physical defect. They could see that on the ultrasound. So the baby's organs were outside of his belly. So that made it a bit easier for me, that I knew, okay, that there was, of course I blame myself. What did I do? maybe I stood on my head too many times doing yoga, or maybe I made some sudden movements, but in the end there was like a genetic thing with the baby and it wasn't a viable pregnancy. um but I remember going into that ultrasound, we were so confident, and for me it was because I could connect to the baby's energy. So every morning I would put my hand on my belly, I would feel my baby's energy. um and it was such a shock to go then to that ultrasound and found out that there was no longer a heartbeat, because but I could feel that connection, and it was actually something that's given me a lot of confidence in sort of my ability to sense energies. And then that's when I discovered that energy doesn't necessarily equal life. That you can still, and in a good sense as well, because I realized I could still connect to that energy even though the baby had already died, right? So there was also a lot of comfort there that the connection stays even though the baby goes. And then I also didn't know what to expect, so I was at home, and I think, that's also something I hear you saying, that there can already be a lot of healing in not, having it taken care of straight away, but waiting a bit. For you was seeing that placenta. For me, it was because it took, I think, 8 days, 8 or 9 days for my miscarriage to come on. So being able to transition from pregnancy to loss, that was really comforting. It was hard, and I grieved a lot that week, but it was also about really consciously saying, okay, this pregnancy is ending. So it didn't sort of happen all at once. I was prepared in an emotional sense a bit, but I also wanted to prepare, like, what is it that I can expect? And there was no information out there, and that's what we started talking about today. So many women experience miscarriages or pregnancy loss. And I think if I Google this now, there's more information out there, but it took me hours of Googling before I found one account of someone who basically, she wrote in her blog what that night had been like for her. So it was heavy cramping, it took hours. That's something I wanted to know. Is this, one big flood of blood and it's done? Or is this a whole process? So I found out, okay, this can take like an entire night. It's okay if it doesn't come on straight away. I even found a midwife who helped me through the miscarriage. So she also came around a couple of times to my house to just provide that information, and to also tell me it's okay if it doesn't come on in a week or a month. It's okay to wait. As long as you feel comfortable waiting, it's okay. There's always like a tiny risk of infection, but you just have to check your body and feel, or your body can already tell you a lot of that. But it's okay to wait a bit if that's what you need. And I had the same experience as you had, that it was like labor, heavy contractions. And I created a whole podcast episode about this, how I wanted to turn it into a ritual. I thought if we can have beautiful births, then we can also have beautiful losses, because that's something that you take with you out of that experience. I don't want this to be this horrible affair. I want to be very mindful about. So I thought I would go into my yoga room and put on music and candles. And then I actually tried it for 5 minutes. And then I realized, yeah, a ritual is not necessarily candles and music. I just wanted to lay in my bed with my eyes closed and really be with the contractions. And again, that's something that gave me a lot of confidence for labor later on, because I realized I can do this. My body can do this. I don't need to do anything. I don't need to prepare. My body knows what to do. And then at the exact right moment, my body told me, now it's time to go to the bathroom. And that's when I had the actual miscarriage on the floor by myself, and it was perfect that way. It was ugly, painful, and perfect that way, because my body knew what to do. So there was so much that I learned from that experience. Another thing, and I saw that you mentioned this in your stories as well, is then after the miscarriage, so I just started a new job, but then we had the ultrasound, so I didn't want to go in and have my baby in the office, or lose my baby in the office. So I told my boss about this, and she was like, okay, you can work from home, you can take your time. But I didn't have any guidance on how long it takes to recover from a miscarriage. And I saw that that's something you posted about as well. So yeah, what was the aftermath like for you in terms of just the physical recovery, and also what did you do spiritually or emotionally to process that?
Yeah, so after I went through that, I realized, like, this is a birth. This was a birth. Um, this needs to be honored as a birth. And I need to take care of myself the way I would take care of myself if I went through a full-term pregnancy and gave birth to an living healthy baby. There's so much emphasis on postpartum care right now, which is beautiful, but mostly that extends to full-term pregnancies. But there's not a lot again out there around like early births and even abortions, because even an abortion is a birth. Still, every pregnancy ends in a birth, and however that looks like, every experience is a birth. So but going through that myself, I just there was no doubt for me that it is a birth and I need to honor that. And I did everything that I would do if I just gave birth to healthy babies. So and I just thought I will check what's the recommended thing though, because I was curious. There's still some. I still wanted to be validated and for someone to say that to me, that yes, it is a birth, you need to take care of yourself, you need to do all of those postpartum things that you would do. So again, I googled it. And yeah, I think it just said, everyone's unique, but, generally speaking, you can return to work within the next 3 days or something after miscarriage. And I was just like, what the hell? Like, there's no way I would do anything for the next 3 days, let alone go to work. And yeah, so I thought, like, because this is a birth, again, I would honor it the same way as I did with my first pregnancy, with my first postpartum, but not doing the whole 40 days, because with the full-term birth, there's the tradition of doing 40 days of that postpartum bubble. And I thought, the 40 days doesn't quite make sense, because I don't know, this pregnancy was shorter. My hips haven't expanded quite as much, and it's just felt like there was less burden on my body generally, even though it was a birth. So for me, it felt like a reasonable time would be maybe 2 to 3 weeks rather than 40 days. And so, yeah, that's what I did. The next few days, I was just laying in bed. I was steaming, yoni steaming, because that's what I did again with my first postpartum experience. I think it's really beautiful and healing, nurturing, keeping the womb warm. And yeah, and I remember I was just staying in bed a lot, and I was just making sure I'm really warm. My partner was cooking me really nourishing, like soups and just really hearty, delicious food, and not doing anything. Like I didn't, like my body just went through birth. It was, still, like I wanted my organs to just recover and rest, and my womb was probably still heavy because I was still bleeding, so I didn't do any work in the house, or literally just lay in bed. And and yeah, that was the next couple of days. And then I started slowly moving around the house, and I always had a wrap around my womb. And I would always stay away from the drafts, because I just wanted to keep that body part really warm. I don't know, I can't explain it. I was really kind of conscious of it and aware, and every time there was a draft or a cold, I would just really feel it in my womb space, and it just didn't feel right. So I really prioritized just staying warm and eating nourishing food, not eating anything cold. Yeah, and just taking it really, really easy, and just allowing myself to rest emotionally as well, and to just process what just happened and be with that loss and sadness and pain, as much as I could. Um, I do like admit that there were times where I just wanted to numb myself, and with whatever I could, whether that was scrolling or trying to watch movies. There was some of that too, because that was a way for me to just numb and not be with that 24/7, because it is so heavy. Yeah, but I did, and even though physically I was taking care of myself, I feel like emotionally I was really spiraling. you know, it was really, yeah, I feel like I was just like, I was just constantly, again, triggered. I was always just crying. I was always upset and, you know, really emotional. And again, just really resentful towards my partner. And I was trying to blame him for everything. And I recognized that I was doing it. It was really strange because, like, I could see myself from the side. And I was like, why, you know, it's not his fault. It's not your fault. Like, and, you know, I could understand him completely. And but a part of me just wanted to blame it on someone. And I didn't blame it on myself because you said you were blaming it on yourself, but I didn't, because I was like, I did everything right. You know, I did everything so well. Anyway, yeah. And I remember one day I was just looking in the mirror because I love to do mirror work, and there was one day when I was just looking in the mirror and I saw myself as a mess that I was, and I just looked myself in the eyes and I was like I really need something drastic, like really major, for me to just snap out of this, because like I could just feel and see myself from the side of how I was digging myself into a hole, but I couldn't snap out of it. It's like I was consciously realizing I was doing it, but I just couldn't get out of that hole. I don't know if you can relate to that, but I just felt like I really need something really drastic here because nothing else is quite working. So I decided to do a ceremony for myself. And literally a couple of days after I realized that I was off, I found this really private place in the middle of the bush. And I went there, I set up my camping gear, and I took some mushrooms because I needed something drastic, like I said. And I generally, you know, I had some experience microdosing mushrooms and I really like that. Like I feel like it can be really powerful, but I thought this time I'm not gonna microdose. Like I want something really big, like to shake me up, because I need it. And actually I decided I'm gonna fast for a few days just to make sure that, like, to strengthen this, you know, experience, to cleanse myself and just to be like a kind of a pure vessel for the ceremony. And so I set up my ceremony space, and I made the tea with the mushrooms, and I set my intentions, which was, you know, to heal and to see beyond, and to, you know, to, yeah, I guess to heal was the main thing that I was calling in, the healing. And I went and I found a beautiful place and I buried the placenta that I birthed. And just doing that was so beautiful. And as soon as I did that, I felt so much healing already. And I felt the spirit and the presence of this baby with me as soon as I planted it. And I just felt like as soon as I did that, like on my way down from that place where I buried it, I just felt like, oh, you know, this needed to happen. This was the journey that this pregnancy needed to take. This was what was needed for me. And yeah, and I, like I said, I was really hoping for this really powerful experience with the mushrooms, and I thought I'll be like in different dimensions and seeing things. And the crazy thing is that the mushrooms like didn't really do anything. They didn't, like I felt really like something, but not what I was expecting, not what I was hoping for, aiming for. And that was a big thing for me, and that was because that just showed me, like, you see, you can't control things, you know, no matter how much you plan, no matter how much you prepare, no matter how much you fast, like you can't control things. And you know, this was the message from the mushrooms and from this baby as well, because I was clinging so much to this control of, like, I want to have this baby, I want to have it now, I want to have this age gap, and it needs to happen right now. And so yeah, that was a big thing that ceremony showed me, was letting go of control that I was like hanging on to so much, and just realizing I'm not in control here.
Mm.
I can just experience and be present with what is unfolding for me, but I'm not in control. And the other thing that I I guess experienced in that ceremony, or like the messages that I've received, was just around how I was putting a lot of things on hold to have this baby. Like there
Mm.
was so much that I wanted to do, but every single month I was thinking, oh, but I'm gonna get pregnant, and I
Mm.
don't want to be doing that because of that. And because because it wasn't happening, I was just getting frustrated. It was kind of contributing to this whole thing of
Mhm.
that was emotional thing that was building up. And so the message was like, just carry on with your life as if you would, um, you know, uh, if you weren't planning to get pregnant.
Yeah.
And because you need to live out your life purpose, like you're here to do something, and so you need to
Mm.
do it, and that's when the baby will come, because you're on the right path and you're living out what you're meant to be doing. But because you're blocking yourself from doing that,
Yeah.
like you're kind of stuck energetically and physically and on all those levels, then the baby is not going to be coming through if you're stuck, basically.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing for me. And
Yeah.
I came home after that ceremony, so I spent the night there. And the next day, I just felt so light,
Mm.
It was just like I came back a new person. I felt so light, so hopeful, just really like healed. And at that point, I can say that I've really healed from that experience. Like that ceremony was really healing. Yeah.
And I can imagine there was still grief or sadness, but when you talk about healing, that's like the deeper layer, right? Of the
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, exactly. And that whole month, I think, or like for a few weeks after that, I feel like I was just on a really high,
Mm.
which is really strange. But I felt so good, and I was on a high, like emotional high. I was really just feeling really good, and I just felt like,
Mm.
I'm so grateful for this experience. It really set me on the path that I needed to go on. And yeah, but of course, and then after that, I did have like waves of the ups and downs, and I did have grief come up, and particularly with one of like when my cycle returned, I felt like there was a lot of grief around that time
Mhm.
that I didn't even realize it was there, but somehow it like just all came out at some point. Um, and I was like, oh, I didn't realize I was still, holding on to that.
Mm.
But um, yeah, yeah, it's been a bit of a journey. And
Yeah.
yeah.
It's like, everything that we can do with our cycles in sort of normal months times 10, where you just, there's so much. It opens you up. I think pregnancy loss, it opens you up. It
Mhm.
tears you open. It
Yes,
tears you open.
100%.
And
And it happens for like, I mean, I can only speak from my own experience, but apart from just what it helped me release all of those emotions, like all that negativity that I was holding on to. Having that loss experience and doing the ceremony, it's just like it took all of those emotions away, and it created space for me and my partner to um yeah, clear that again,
mhm.
that fog and that negativity that was kind of happening there. So I feel like it really cleared our relationship in many levels. Um, it allowed us to kind of work through all of these things that maybe I was blocking, or I was kind of holding on to, and it allowed me to clear my personal things around my struggles with my career and where I want to be, because I just felt so stuck with that too.
Mhm.
So yeah, I feel like it's it was something that needed to happen, and I'm really grateful for that experience.
Yeah, that's the
But
same
I
for
don't want to
me.
go through that again. To having said that, it doesn't. It's still. I wouldn't want to go through that again. As thankful as I am
Uh,
to that, yeah, it was really.
there's yeah, I think there's two sides to the same coin. On the one hand, like I said, it tears you open and there's so much space for healing and going to the deeper layer, but that means really stepping into the darkness, and that's not something you want to do every month.
No.
But it is good to know that the possibility is there, that there's more to a loss than just the grief and the pain, and that you can go to that deeper layer. And yeah, I can really see how it has completely transformed your fertility journey and how it will
Yeah.
change the way that you
Yeah.
try to conceive. Maybe letting go of
Yeah.
perfectionism and sort of the divine feminine perfectionism. Yeah. I want to
Yeah.
talk
The
to you about
control.
your work, about the yoni steams, but we are already at an hour. So maybe you would be opening to scheduling another interview where we talk about your work. Is that okay?
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
love that.
And then
Mm-hmm.
we can just round up the conversation now by asking you what would be your general message for anyone else who's dealing with pregnancy loss or fertility issues.
Mm-hmm. I think trusting your body, um, allowing your trusting in the process that you're going through, um, and connecting with your womb space. I think for me, it always goes back to just connecting with the womb space. And I think when we are, just speaking from personal experience again, just being on that fertility journey and trying to conceive, and kind of things not going to plan, it's really hard, it's really easy to just disconnect from your womb and to kind of lose trust in your womb, and also give away your authority to other people, and who are telling you need to do this to conceive, you need to do this, you need to eat that or do that, and you just kind of trying to hold on to every advice you can,
Mm.
and losing that kind of connection with your own body. So just listening to your womb, like even physically placing your hands on it, breathing into it, allowing it to speak to you, because the womb speaks to you. So if you can just open yourself, drop into it and listen, and yeah, and trust in that, because no one knows better than you what you need in your
Mm.
journey, whether that's your fertility journey or whether that's your pregnancy loss experience. Just trusting yourself and trusting your womb and connecting to that and having that as your anchor.
Mm. I love that. And I so recognize what you're saying. Like I follow all of these fertility accounts on Instagram, and I mean it's so good that there's so much information out there, and at the same time there is so much information out there. Just even if it's just about nutrition or supplements, you can get so lost in all of that. And in the end, the solution is in your own body. You maybe even if it's just about which nutritional advice to sort of seek out, like you don't have to do all
Mm-hmm.
of the research. You can just feel like, what is it that I really need to be working on right now, and then find that support. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Hey, and where can people find out more about you and your work?
So at the moment, I share a lot on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
So my Instagram account is Marina Lyshova, MarinALYSHOVA. And I also have a website that I'm slowly building.
Mm.
So it's got some of my offerings on it. And the website is just my name, so marinalyshova.com.
Okay. And that's also where people can find out more about the womb hara. I think you just started offering your sessions, right?
Yeah, so
Womb
I
hara
offer
sessions.
in-person sessions
Yeah.
in Newcastle.
Do you also work
Yeah, really.
virtually or just in person?
So I am working on some online workshops at the moment,
Mm-hmm.
which I'll actually be releasing very soon.
Okay.
Probably will be released by the time this podcast is out. And I am also going to be opening, offering one-on-one online yoni steaming consultations.
Mm. Perfect.
Yeah.
I'll put everything in the show notes. And then we'll schedule a new call to talk more about your work, because we
Beautiful.
briefly touched upon yoni steaming today. I didn't even ask you to elaborate. So we'll talk more about that in the future.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Francois, for having me.
Thank you.
It's been really lovely to share my experience, and hopefully it can be, just sharing this maybe can be helpful to someone out there.
Thank you for coming on the show. And thanks also to the listeners for tuning in this week. If you want to reach out to me, you can find me on Instagram at thatfertilefeeling, or email me at francois@thatfertilefeeling.com. I always love to hear from you, and I always get back to you, and hope to see you back next week. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to That Fertile Feeling, the podcast. If you like what you heard, then please head over to your preferred podcast player and subscribe to the show. It would also be great if you could leave a review and rating so that other listeners can find the show easily. And if you think that anyone you know could benefit from the materials on this show, then go ahead and share it with them. It would be much appreciated. I look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye, love.